And we're going to move to our third and final agency presentation today. And joining us is the Secretary of Department of Agriculture, Secretary Atticks. And Secretary Atticks, thanks for being here. This is your second year presenting with us, and I really appreciate, again, that engagement and that collaboration with the Department of Agriculture here. For those of you who don't know Secretary Atticks, he served as the Secretary of Agriculture since 2023. He brings a strong focus on supporting value-added agriculture, enhancing agricultural education, and promoting farm-to-table connections. Under his leadership, the Department of Agriculture advances sustainable practices, strengthens the state's food system industries, and drives economic growth while protecting Maryland's farms, natural resources, and most importantly, rural communities. So, Secretary Atticks, thanks again for being here, and we look forward to hearing what the agency has cooking for this General Assembly's legislative session.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, team. Much appreciate the invitation to join and look forward to giving you a quick overview of what we have in store this session. So we can jump to the next slide. So, first and foremost, I want to congratulate the legislature and the governor for the passage of the really, really cool Chesapeake Bay Legacy Act. So, that had a bunch of components in it, not just for agriculture and farming with conservation in mind, but also evolving how we farm. And then there was a whole lot of work regarding the fisheries as well. So, it was an extremely practical bill that is yielding results. One of the benefits that we have for the agricultural community is the creation of the Leaders in Environmentally Engaged Farming, or LEAF program. So this is a program that we are building out. Talked a little bit about it last year, but it's a program that we're building out and should be launching this year. And what it does is it's focused on two types of practices: conservation practices and community practices. And the whole goal of it is to encourage farmers through incentives to stack their practices. So right now we've got a couple of programs that encourage the adoption of practices, but they're specific practices. And we've seen that certain members of the industry have really begun to lead and go further, farther, faster than other segments of the industry. And so we're trying to harness some of that innovation as the Caesar report recommended, like, let's sandbox things, let's try new things. And when they look to be working, let's embed them. There are certain practices that we credit and they feed up into the Chesapeake Bay model. And then there are lots of other practices that other states are not engaging in. So they're not part of the Chesapeake Bay model practice program to meet our WIP goals. But we know from research that they're productive. They're really, really great for keeping nutrients on farms or reducing the application of nutrients. Some are extremely practical in nature, and so LEAF will be able to target these where they're most needed, give the most incentives for where they're most needed, but encourage overall industry participation by just encouraging the stacking of these, and then each year creating a symposium for the industry to begin sharing the practices that they're engaged in. Two updates. We have a LEAF coordinator who has just started. Elizabeth Hoffman is on our team. She's been working on WIP for the Chesapeake Bay program goals, and we're so excited to have her now focusing entirely on LEAF. So she just began last week. We're going to give her a week, and then we're going to jump in and check on the progress. Cover crop funding, conservation grants, and land preservation initiatives are all encouraged and promoted under the LEAF program. But as I noted, there will be so many other um, conservation practices, but also for the first time, community practices. And so these community practices will be focused really on some of the other issues that we see are plaguing agriculture, like the lack of connection between our general population and agriculture. And so we'll be incentivizing engagement with the public, whether that is if you're growing food table crops, if you can start a CSA, you will be credited for engaging with the public. If you're engaging in some form of agritourism and doing it in a way that is truly evolving the literacy about agriculture, then we love that. So we're going to be promoting those things. So next slide. And I should say, actually, on that last slide, we don't have to go back, but we did go back, which is great. Thank you for that. One other component of the Chesapeake Bay Legacy Act is under DNR's code, and it's allowing them to adjust their leases for state-owned land that can be used for farming to make it easier, better, more ideal for smaller farmers, specifically regenerative farmers, folks that are ending up focusing on those table crops. So that becomes not just a let's help new entrants get into the industry, um, but it also promotes regenerative farming. And then beyond that, it helps us grow our food shed, our food production within the food shed. So, really excited about more news from DNR on that this year. Now, the next slide. Our only legislative priority this session is to extend and renew our Maryland Horse Industry Board. That sunsets every 10 years, and so we're just extending that. So you'll see us talking about horses a lot, but what we're also thinking about is ensuring that wherever the governor sets the budget for our conservation programs and land preservation, that we can keep that. So those are incredible programs for our industry and for Maryland. Preserving land, no brainer. It gets it out of development and keeps it green and in farm production and conservation, which is so critically important in a high development pressure state like we have. Bay Restoration Fund and other things that money goes to, including cover crops. Cover crops is the single best bang for the buck in terms of keeping nutrients on the land and out of the water. And of course, our cost share program, which is funded through a mix of federal state funds. And we want to make sure that wherever the governor sets the budget, that we are keeping the funding. So I will encourage support for that. If these programs are important, let's try to keep funding for them. We can jump to the next slide, which may be not me. So it's former Director Pinsky who's coming up in a moment. But just wanted to thank everybody for your engagement. We have really attempted to engage with the conservation and environmental community, and you've been instrumental in helping us build out the LEAF program. So keep it up. Keep talking with us. Keep bringing ideas because we've learned so much. We only know what we know. And for so many years, we've been sticking within the agricultural community. So it's great to be out there holding hands with conservation and environment. So, Matt, back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Secretary. And we do have a question, if you don't mind, just hanging on just a second. So the cost share program that you mentioned, does that also cover urban agriculture? Are there components of that that offer cost share to urban agriculture?
Yes, so there are certain practices under the cost share that will apply to urban agriculture, but we also have a specific urban agriculture grant fund which helps urban ag operations stand up and get moving. It's specifically for infrastructure. So what we found is that urban ag sometimes because of where it is and how it gets started, it does not always have the needed infrastructure, so water, electricity. So just making sure that, there's some grant funding specifically for urban ag needs as well. But please reach out to us and we'll have a good conversation.
Yeah, and what do you suggest is the best way that the community can support your budget initiatives? Knowing that last year was such a big cut for the Department of Agriculture, where do you see the advocacy opportunity? Where do you see the community really throwing support for the funding programs that are so important for you?
Well, frankly, what helped so much last year were the stories told by our conservation partners. The fact that, this is an ag budget line item. However, it is something that is directly impacting the bay, directly impacting, in preservation, and including it's not just cover crops and it's not just the specific conservation practices. It is preserving that land, getting it out from under the eyes of development, and that is both hard development and some soft development, like solar. We want to make sure that we have the opportunity for farmers who want to keep preserving that land as agricultural land because they've invested, sometimes generations in soil improvements and engaging in our practices, that they have the ability to do so. So funding for that definitely there's a direct line to conservation.
Yeah, great. And you brought up solar. There's a question about solar, so I can't hold back. But what are you grappling with right now, front and center with solar? You talk about land preservation,
Yep.
and also we're going to hear from Senator Pinsky, who I'm sure is going to hit hard on the need for more alternative energy sources and solar on the shore. So you're right in the middle of it. Tell us a little bit about where your feelings are most right now and what the public should really understand regarding the solar and agricultural discussion.
Yeah, I have a lot of feelings. The industry has a lot of feelings about solar. If you just start with some facts, we need energy. We need to generate energy, and if we're going to generate energy, it should be clean energy. So, we have agreement up to that point. Then the next question is how much land, arable, farmable land is too much to be taken offline. And there's lots of equations and discussions about that. One of the biggest challenges, and I find that a lot of people don't understand this, is there is a tension between solar development, which wants to do it as inexpensively and efficiently as possible, which, the subtext of that can mean that kind of rules out the solar industry targeting rooftops and parking lots because those are rather fussy from an infrastructure standpoint. You have to dig, you have to run, hard lines, you don't have large scale square feet or acreage. Whereas on a farmland, generally flat, if you're talking about the Eastern Shore, generally flat, easy to install. And so, from a solar developer standpoint, farmland, if all things are equal, farmland becomes a priority. And the industry would say a target. One of the things that most folks don't understand is that most of that farmland that you drive through on the way to the beach or, going north on the Eastern Shore, it's not owned by the farmer. And so the farmer doesn't have the ability to make the decisions. The landowner who's leasing it to the farmer does. And so if you're a farmer that's been investing in new equipment based on a certain scale of operations, and all of a sudden 500 or 1,000 of your acres, which could be a quarter, 10%, 50% of your farming operation, gets put into solar, again, you didn't make that decision, someone else made it for you, then your business model collapses. I will say that every time we have this discussion, we're not anti-solar generally, completely on farms because we want the landowner to be able to have the option to do it. It's just unfortunate that the farmer is not always the landowner. We do have some farmers who have opted to take less productive land and put that in solar, and they've taken that money and they've bought more productive land elsewhere. So, there is a market based component to it, but it's the if all things are equal, and I'm a solar developer, what looks to be virgin land, but it's really productive, profitable farmland, looks to be the place that I'm going to go target.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And what you bring up is these are really business decisions. In some cases, the farmer isn't the landowner making those decisions, but of course that impact is there. And then on the other side, the business of the solar industry is also has pressure in making those decisions. And so I liked what you said there about thinking creatively about maybe where there is less productive land versus where there's really prime land and making sure that we're protecting that really, really good agriculture land. And yeah, go ahead. I see you have a
Yeah, if
point.
I could just add one thing, because I see in comment a lot of talk about agrivoltaics, which is of course, the dream and the ideal. Uh, One of the challenges with we'll just make it agrivoltaic, and why don't you just farm under it or in between it? That works for a certain type of farmer on a certain type of land. But if you're talking the Eastern Shore, and you're seeing soybeans and corn and sorghum and all of that, the combines are 30, 50, 100 feet wide. And so the rows, in order to farm that way, would have to be that big. That doesn't make any sense for commercial solar. For commercial solar, there are some agrivoltaic and agricultural component options. Obviously, grazing sheep is kind of the ideal. Then the solar developer does not need to mow that area. They've got sheep that are mowing it. And then you've got whatever your product is from sheep, whether it's lamb, whether it's wool, etc. There are some crops that are being shown through some university research studies to benefit from a little bit of shade. Now you have way less density of crops if you're doing it in between rows. But yes, you could plant flowers for commercial uses, not pollinators, but commercial flower. You could plant some fruits as well. But again, the density of it doesn't always pencil out from a farming profitability standpoint.
Mhm.
So it is definitely a discussion, something we want to explore. But where solar is being targeted, it does not make sense right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Secretary. I can say I feel comforted in knowing your history and innovation and collaboration and taking on these challenges head on, that they're being thought out, very thoughtfully moving forward, and that you're really keeping in mind, the landowners, the land use, our rural communities, and all of that in the outcomes of these discussions. So again, I want to thank you for joining us today for your second time at the annual Summit for Climate and the Environment. We really appreciate having the Department of Agriculture here. And similar to MDE, I've seen a number of your staff on here this whole weekend too. And so again, that's a really good sign that we're all working together and trying to accomplish what's best for the state of Maryland. So thank you, Secretary Atticks, and we really appreciate you being here today.